Just keep striving. God will watch over you. I wanted to write down this expression of gratitude, not merely to keep a record, but to tell every single one of you reading these words, you are not alone. In places you cannot see, there is a pair of loving hands holding you up. In dimensions you cannot hear, there is a wise voice guiding your way. Just keep striving, and God will watch over you. It was the autumn of 3 years ago when I lost my job. To say I was unemployed is actually a euphemism. To be more precise, the very last straw, the one I had grasped with every ounce of my strength, snapped in two right before my eyes. It was my 5th job since graduating, and the one in which I had invested the greatest hope. I naively believed that if I simply worked hard enough, I would surely be able to find my footing this time. And indeed, I worked myself to the bone. Every day, I was the first to arrive at the office and the last to leave. During lunch breaks, while others scrolled through their phones, I was poring over industry reports. On weekends, while my colleagues gathered for karaoke, I stayed home, hunched over my computer, devouring specialized textbooks. I poured every moment, every ounce of energy, and every spark of passion I possessed into that job, holding nothing back. I even held the naive belief that God surely saw my efforts, and that He would undoubtedly reward such devotion. Yet, reality delivered a resounding slap across my face. The news of the company-wide layoffs arrived without a single warning sign. That very week, I had pulled 3 consecutive all-nighters working on a critical project. On Friday evening, dragging my weary body out of the office, I was still thinking about how I would spend the weekend further refining my proposal. On Monday morning, as I swiped my access card to enter the building just as I always did, the security system flashed a message: access denied. Or called me into a conference room and, in that practiced professional tone, informed me that due to a corporate restructuring, my position had been eliminated. The entire department was being completely dismantled. It wasn't a reflection of my performance, but rather a strategic decision made by the company. They told me they would provide severance pay in accordance with labor laws. They offered to write letters of recommendation if needed, and they expressed their apologies. I listened with a blank expression, signed the papers with a blank expression, and packed my belongings with a blank expression. It wasn't until I walked out of the building clutching a cardboard box filled with my personal effects, and felt the crisp autumn wind rushing to embrace me, that I suddenly realized I was weeping. It wasn't a loud, wailing cry, but rather a silent weeping, tears welling up from the very depths of my soul. I stood on the street corner, feeling like a child abandoned by the world. The sky hung gray and overcast, like a rag washed too many times, wrung dry of every last drop of hope. The 3 months that followed were the darkest days of my life. I dared not tell my parents. They were getting on in years and in poor health. They had spent their entire lives living frugally to put me through school, and had finally lived to see me graduate and land a job. How could I possibly tell them that I was unemployed once again? Whenever my mother called to ask how work was going, I would always, "Things are just busy with a project right now, so I'm a little tired." After hanging up, I would sit alone in my rented room, staring blankly into space for hours on end. I began to question everything: my own abilities, the choices I had made, and even the very existence of God. If there really was a God, why was He doing this to me? What had I done wrong? I had staked all my faith and devotion on this. Was faith is fey the only result I had to show for it? During that time, every morning when I woke up, the first thing I would ask myself was, "Fey, what is the point of today?" Asterisk, the resumes I sent out vanished like stones dropped into the ocean. I went on several job interviews, but none of them led anywhere. The balance in my bank account dwindled day by day. Rent had to be paid. I had to eat. And utility bills were due. Every single number served as a stark reminder, you are a failure. Asterisk, on the night I felt most desperate. I stood by the window of my rented room, gazing down at the ceaseless flow of traffic and people moving along the street below. Everyone seemed to have a direction. Everyone had somewhere to go. Except for me. I felt like a leaf blown loose by the wind, unable to find a branch to call home. It was in that very moment that I remembered the words my grandmother had spoken to me just before she passed away. My grandmother was the most devout person I had ever known. She was illiterate, yet she could recite countless scriptures word for word without a single error. She possessed no knowledge of complex theological theories, yet her faith in God was as pure and clear as a crystal clear spring. No matter what troubles she faced, she would always say, "Leave it to God, He will make a way." When I was a child, I used to think this was mere ignorance, a sign of weakness, or simply an escape from the harsh realities of life. Looking back now, I realize that was, in fact, the greatest wisdom. How immense a person's inner strength must be to maintain such unwavering trust amidst the storms of life. The day Grandma passed away was a spring evening. The hospital room was permeated with the scent of disinfectant, while the setting sun outside the window painted the sky a warm orange-red hue. She was already very frail. Her voice, when she spoke, sounded like distant wind chimes, so faint it was almost inaudible. Yet, summoning every ounce of her strength, she clasped my hand tightly within her own. Her hands were thin and bony, with prominent knuckles, yet they possessed a strange, singular strength. She looked into my eyes and spoke, articulating every word with deliberate care. "Child, Grandma is leaving you now. I have nothing material to leave behind for you, save for one simple phrase, one you must always remember. Just keep striving, and God will watch over you." Asterisks, I wept in that moment. I did not fully believe her words, but I believed in her heart. Here was an elderly woman on the very threshold of departing this world, entrusting her most cherished conviction, her deepest faith, as a final gift to a young soul lost in confusion. Yet, during those dark days of unemployment, I completely forgot her words. Or perhaps it was not so much that I forgot them, but rather that I had lost faith in them. I felt that God was not watching over me at all. I began to suspect that Grandma's steadfast trust might have been misplaced from the very start. That is, until that night I stood by the window when her words suddenly, like a seed buried deep within the earth, sprouted forth from the very depths of my soul. I cannot find the words to describe the sensation of that moment. It was akin to having wandered through a dense fog for a very, very long time, only to suddenly catch sight of a single lamp glowing in the distance. The light was faint, far too dim to illuminate the entire path ahead, yet it was enough to let me know I was not alone. A path still lay before me, and I had to keep moving forward. Perhaps God's protection does not mean clearing away every obstacle in my path, but rather granting me the courage to keep going when I am at my most desperate. Perhaps God's protection does not mean ensuring I never stumble, but rather granting me the strength to rise again after I have fallen. Perhaps God's protection does not mean handing me the answers in advance, but rather allowing me, through the very process of seeking those answers, to grow into the kind of person worthy of receiving them. That night, I made a decision rather than standing still and weeping. I would take that first step forward, even if this step is small, even if I do not know where it might lead. At the very least, I am making an effort. Since then, I have gained a completely new understanding of what it means to make an effort. In the past, I viewed effort as a transaction. I used my hard work to bargain with God for a return. A process as simple and direct. I reasoned, if I put in the effort, you are obligated to grant me a good outcome. If I fail to receive that good outcome, then you have broken your promise. This mindset left me feeling anxious, calculating, and constantly fearful of loss. Every ounce of effort I expended was laden with intense expectation. Consequently, every disappointment left me feeling even more angry and resentful. But now I understand. Effort is never a transaction. Rather, it is a journey walked alongside God. Have you ever watched the sunrise? The sky is still dark, and you do not know exactly when the sun will appear. Yet you choose to stand there and wait. You do not strike a bargain with the sun. You do not say, I am waiting here for you, so you famous rise. You simply choose to do the right thing, and then you wait, patiently and in silence. And the sun, invariably, rises exactly when it is meant to rise. Effort is much the same. You choose to pour your heart into everything you do, not because that specific task is guaranteed to yield a reward, but simply because it represents the best choice you can make in that moment. You entrust the outcome to God, much as a farmer scatters seeds into the soil and then waits with patience. He does not know the exact day the seeds will sprout, nor the day the stalks will bear grain. Yet he knows that so long as he has fulfilled his duty, God will ensure the crops grow. There's an old Neapolitan proverb, do what you can and leave the rest to God. In the past, I dismissed this as a form of passive fatalism. Now, however, I recognize it not as an act of evasion, but as an act of trust. It is the act of a person, having poured every ounce of energy into their endeavors, confidently entrusting the final outcome to a higher power. It is like a child handing a finished drawing to their father. They do not seek perfection, but simply the assurance of being seen and accepted. During those days of unemployment, I ceased pinning all my hopes on finding the perfect job. Instead, I began to turn my gaze inward and re-examine myself. What were the gaps in my skill set? What aspects of my mindset required adjustment? What did the life I truly desired actually look like? While continuing my job search, I dedicated myself to the following pursuits. I began rising an hour earlier each day to acquire new skills. All those things I had previously claimed I never had the time to learn. Well, now I finally had the time. Over the course of 3 months, I studied for and earned a professional certification of significant value and prestige. I began to write, not for publication, nor for likes, but simply to untangle my own thoughts. I wrote down all the confusion, bewilderment, and fear swirling within me, and then I read it all back as if I were a detached observer. This process allowed me to gain clarity on many things I had previously failed to grasp. I began to exercise. Every evening, no matter how foul my mood, I would head out for a 30-minute run. The moment the sweat began to flow, the knots of frustration tightening in my heart seemed to dissolve a little. As my body grew stronger, my willpower grew more resilient. I began attending a small chapel regularly, not because I had suddenly become deeply pious, but because I discovered that, amidst that quiet atmosphere, my heart could find a rare and precious sense of peace. Sitting on a pew, listening to the pastor recount ancient stories, and watching the sunlight stream through the stained glass windows onto the floor, I felt a profound sense of security, a feeling of being truly accepted, None of these activities directly helped me find a job. Yet, they transformed me into a different person. Someone more composed, more self-assured, and grounded in a deeper sense of inner strength. I wonder if you have ever experienced this. When you are truly striving to better yourself, the entire world seems to conspire to help you. It isn't magic, nor is it mere coincidence. Rather, few have changed, and the world you perceive changes right along with you. You begin to notice opportunities you previously overlooked. You begin to attract people who resonate with your own frequency, and you begin to realize that countless resources have been there all along. You simply lack the vision to see them before. This is how God offers His guidance. He does not walk your path for you, but rather helps you polish your vision so that you may clearly discern the road that lies ahead. In the 4th month, the job arrived. It didn't come as a chaotic flood of offers, but rather as Faith the Right Job Faye, appearing at Faith the Right Time Faye, in Faith the Right Way Faye, and presenting itself to Faith the Right Version of me Faye. Looking back now, had I landed that job during my very first month of unemployment, I surely would have failed at it. At that time, I simply wasn't ready, neither in terms of skills, nor mindset, nor character. Had I forced my way through that door prematurely, I likely would have found myself back where I started within 3 months, let go due to a lack of competence or a fragile state of mind. But God's timetable is not our timetable. We humans are always in a rush. We crave instant gratification and immediate returns. We tend to view life as a 100-meter sprint, wishing we could see the glint of a medal with every single stride. But God views it as a marathon. He knows exactly when you should run and when you should slow down to conserve your strength. He knows when to let you weather the storms, for those very storms will make you stronger. He knows when to let you stumble and fall, for only those who have fallen truly understand how to rise again. You might think of it this way. God is like a gardener. You plant a seed in the winter and check on it every day, wondering, why hasn't it sprouted yet? Why is there still no sign of life? Growing anxious from the wait, you begin to suspect the seed might be rotten. Yet the gardener knows that, beneath the soil, the seed is performing a vital task. It must first establish its roots, anchoring them deep and wide enough to gather the strength required to grow upward. If you were to dig it up just to check on it, you would truly kill it. Those 3 months of waiting were God's time for me to take root. He allowed me to lose my job so that I would be forced to pause and clearly discern what I truly desired. He led me through moments of despair so that I might learn not to anchor my sense of security in external circumstances, but rather in something far more steadfast. He allowed me to experience loneliness so that I might learn how to be at peace with myself and with Him. In Faith the Old Man and the Sea Fee, Hemingway wrote, "Man is not made for defeat. A man can be destroyed but not defeated." During those 3 months, although I did not achieve the immediate results I sought, I refused to let failure define me. Every single day, I strove to become a better person, and that very striving, that effort in itself, was the greatest victory of all. After I began my new job, I looked back on that period with a heart overflowing with gratitude. It was not the airy, superficial gratitude for suffering, often found in sentimental platitudes, but a deep, authentic gratitude, one that felt as though it had grown from the very marrow of my bones. I am grateful for every sleepless night during those 3 months, for they taught me how to remain calm amidst the darkness. I am grateful for every job interview where I faced rejection, for those experiences chipped away at my pride and taught me the virtue of humility. I am grateful for the dwindling balance in my bank account, for it taught me to distinguish between what I truly needed and what I merely wanted. And I am grateful for that one night when I stood by the window, so consumed by despair that I contemplated giving up, for that was my rock bottom. It is only when a person hits rock bottom that they realize every direction leads upward. What I am even more grateful for is that, during my darkest moments, a single beam of light still managed to shine through. Not a harsh glare, nor a blinding radiance, but a gentle light, just bright enough to illuminate the path beneath my feet. That light was the echo of my grandmother's words. Just keep striving. God will watch over you. That phrase acts like a lamp burning brightly in the deepest recesses of my soul. No matter how dim the outside world may be, whenever I return to that inner sanctuary, I find both direction and strength. Gratitude is a fascinating thing. When you are truly grateful, you discover that simply feeling grateful yourself is not enough. True, profound gratitude overflows, spilling out into the lives of others. And so it was with me. As I emerged from that darkness and looked back to see so many others still wandering lost in the same fog, I felt a deep sense of responsibility to do something. Not because I am particularly noble, but because I know all too well the bitter taste of despair. If my own journey could offer even a glimmer of light to others, then everything I endured would take on a far greater significance. I began sharing my story on social media, not to boast that I'm cured, but to let those currently navigating their own valleys know, I understand exactly how you feel. You are not alone, and there is a way out of this. I have received private messages from so many people. Some told me they wept reading my posts because I had articulated feelings they themselves. Others shared that they were on the brink of unemployment, and that my story had given them the courage to carry on. Still others said nothing at all, simply sending me an emoji of a warm embrace. In every one of those moments, my thoughts turned to my grandmother, to the words she spoke while holding my hand. I imagined that if she were still here today, she would be overjoyed. The phrase she left me has not only watched over Femife, but through me, it has flowed outward to touch the lives of so many others. I have learned to become a better listener. In the past, whenever friends confided their troubles to me, I would always rush to offer advice and solutions, as if failing to solve their problem would make me appear unsupportive. Now I understand that often people don't need you to solve their problems for them. They simply need you to sit with them, to listen, and to let them know they are not alone. A close friend of mine went through a marital crisis last year. She called me late at night and wept for 2 whole hours. I said nothing. I simply listened. Occasionally, I would interject with a quiet, "I am listening," or "I am right here." After the call ended, she sent me a text message, "Thank you for not hanging up on me." In that moment, I realized that this, and nothing else, was the very best thing I could offer. Not answers, not solutions, but simply my presence. It is human nature to harbor a certain tendency to seek comfort by comparing oneself to those who are worse off. Look at that person. They have it so much harder than I do. Actually, I am doing pretty well. This mindset is understandable, yet it fails to foster true gratitude. True gratitude lies in recognizing the grace bestowed upon others, grace that you yourself may lack. And rather than feeling envy rejoicing in their good fortune, it lies in seeing others prosper, living better lives than your own, and instead of feeling a pang of bitterness, offering them your sincere blessings. On one occasion, a friend of mine, who had lost his job around the same time I did, recently landed an excellent position. As he excitedly shared the news with me, I realized that not a single shred of envy stirred within my heart. There was only genuine, heartfelt happiness for him. In that moment I knew I had truly emerged from my slump. A person who has truly climbed out of a low point no longer fears seeing others ascend faster than themselves. for their sense of security is no longer built upon comparison. As I write this, I would like to share a few words from the heart with everyone reading these lines. Perhaps you are currently navigating a low point in your life. Perhaps your hard work has yet to yield any visible results. Perhaps you find yourself, doubting life, or even doubting God. I want to tell you this: none of your efforts have been in vain. You may not be able to see it, much like a seed growing beneath the soil, where no movement is visible on the surface above. You might assume it has died, but in reality, it is busy striking deep roots in the earth below. You might feel that your struggles are meaningless, but in truth, every act of perseverance, every attempt, and every time you pick yourself up after a fall leaves a deep imprint upon the soil of your soul. One day, precisely when you need them most, these imprints will transform into your greatest sources of strength and wisdom. Do not compare your own journey, your process with another person's results. You see only their glamorous highlights and shining moments of success. You do not see the sweat they shed, the sleepless nights they endured, or the immense pressure they shouldered in the places hidden from your view. Everyone moves at their own pace, and God has written a unique script for each of us. Your task is not to act out someone else's script, but to perform your own role, your own life, to the very best of your ability. Do not give up simply because you cannot see immediate results. Had I given up during those 3 months of unemployment, I would never have lived to see the opportunity that arose. Life is a marathon, not a sprint. As the old saying goes, he who has walked 90 miles has only completed half the journey. Far too many people do not lose the race at the starting line, but rather choose to give up when they are just a short distance from the finish line. Most importantly, do not let setbacks lead you to doubt the goodness of God. The darkest moments in the sky often occur. The fiercest storms often rage just before a rainbow appears. God never promised that the skies would always be blue, but He did promise to be with us through the storm. He never promised to spare us from suffering, but He did promise to be present with us within our suffering. Just keep striving. It is not an anxious striving, nor a utilitarian one, not an effort treated as a bargaining chip with God. Rather, it is a calm, sustained effort, undertaken with trust. Strive like a farmer who, having sown the seeds, waits patiently and with peace of mind for the spring and autumn rains. Strive like an athlete who trains day after day, entrusting the outcome to the day of the competition itself. God will bless you.